that's a good question. I'm not sure we can really answer it definitively without getting some truth serum to Chip, and I'm not sure how to get that done. I'd like to. I'd like to see what we could find out if we could, get Chip hooked up to a lie detector. But yeah, I think it's a combination of things. I do think that Chip, has some confidence in himself, and he looked at Sam Bradford and looked at his career, looked at film of him as a quarterback playing in the St. Louis Rams system, and he determined that he had the skill set and the necessary tools to run Chip Kelly's offense effectively. And Bradford did not throw a lot of interceptions in the past. He threw a fair number, but not an overwhelming number. And he threw a lot more touchdowns than interceptions in his previous career. So that was what Chip was going on. The track record the guy had. I think what's kind of interesting right now is that, except for that stretch that Nick Foles had 2 years ago with 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, numbers we can all recite in our sleeve at this point, that seems like the anomaly now. That seems like the thing that we can't really explain. You look at it, last year, the first half of the year, Foles was about even, touchdowns to interceptions. He was not the quarterback he was in 2013. Sanchez came in just about even, touchdowns and interceptions. Now, he had always been that guy in his career, Sanchez, but that was him and Chip Kelly's offense. And then you get Bradford comes here, and he has 9 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. And, that's 3 quarterbacks, each having played about a half a season under Chip Kelly and Chip Kelly's offense. And each of them is about 50-50 on touchdowns and interceptions. That may start to say something about the offense. Now, again, we have Foles in 2013 going 27-2. That stands out. That shows you that the offense can be run successfully. I do feel like that year, Foles got lucky on a few things. He had a few balls that could have been picked that were dropped. He had a few touchdowns that were sort of fluky plays. But 27-2, even if there were a couple of plays that could have gone either way. I mean, what are you talking about? 23-10. That still would have been a pretty good year. So, there's something going on here, whether it's Bradford or the offense or some combination. There's nowhere for Kelly to go. He originally wanted to trade draft picks for Bradford. The Rams insisted on Foles. Kelly reluctantly parted with Foles. If Foles was still here, with that 27-2 season in his recent past, you might have a case that Chip Kelly should go to Foles instead of Bradford at this point. But when it's Sanchez, who essentially had the same kind of numbers, basically, it's really hard to make that argument. So I think, right now, Kelly's going with the guy who has the best chance to show some upside and improve and get better, and that's Bradford at this point. If things continue down this path, and these guys, they lose a couple of games that they maybe could win if the quarterback was a little better, he might have a tougher decision to make. But right now, it seems like the only obvious thing to do is to just see what Bradford is able to come up with.
All right, Phil Sheridan with us. You have a nice piece on it, and I want to dive a little bit more into it. Let me ask you this then. Do you think if he comes out and gives another 3-interception performance and just holds this team back, does Chip Kelly owe it to this defense and to this team to contemplate making a change?
Yeah, I think so. He said Monday, I think it was, Sam is our quarterback. We have a lot of confidence in Sam. I mean, if you go back, it didn't really come up last year because Foles got hurt right in the middle of the season. But the year before that with Michael Vick, that's exactly how he talked about Michael Vick up until the exact minute that he suddenly flipped the switch and said, all right, we're going with Foles now. Vick's on the bench. That's how coaches talk about their starting quarterback. Up until he changes his mind, he will make it sound like Sam Bradford's the guy no matter what and forever, because you got to give that, you've got to give that kind of confidence publicly if you want your quarterback to play well. So that's how he'll talk about Bradford up until the moment he changes his mind, if he does. But yeah, when he did change his mind with Foles and Vic 2 years ago, that's one of the things Kelly said. There's a lot of guys on this team, and I have to respect them. I can't have this defense playing, better than anybody expected, and the offensive line getting its act together, and the running game starting to come together. I can't have all these guys out there. Jason Peters playing hurt and playing really, really well on Monday night. He's a guy that, he's only got X amount of time left in this league. I mean, you're going to ask Jason Peters to go out there and lay it on the line every week. You've got to give him every chance to win. And if it comes to a point where Bradford is the problem and he is holding them back, I think Kelly would have to do it. He would feel compelled to do it. The thing is, they've won the last 2 games with Bradford not playing at its best. So if they can win and keep it going and still hope that Bradford gets it together, Bradford's it's a double-edged thing. He's coming back from the knee injuries and, the time away from football. So he's got a knee that he's got to learn to trust and hits he's got to learn to be able to take without worrying that it's going to end his season. But also, he's learning a whole new offense and all new players around him. So that's a lot to take in at one time and process and sort of work your way through. So I think there is still a chance for Bradford to kind of be the guy we thought he was going to be in the preseason. That time is starting to dwindle as we get into the middle part of the season here. But there is a chance, and while there's a chance and the team's winning, I think Kelly will play that hand.
Yeah, I mean, it's really an interesting scenario here where there's some people, Phil, who said, look, they've played 6 games. Enough's enough. We've seen 6 games. The rust should be off. The timing should be there. The mental capacity of getting over the injury. Do you think 6 games is a fair assessment of Sam Bradford to say that this guy can either be a consistent player or a not a consistent player? Because right now it appears evident that he is just he is what he was in St. Louis.
Yeah, I mean, that's the conclusion that I'm starting to come to as well. I think it's hard not to. We looked at his St. Louis numbers and his performance there, and we kind of figured, okay, well, maybe some of that was the offense, some of that was the talent around him, and then, of course, the injuries then became a factor. But now, you're looking at 6 games. You can raise some questions about the offensive talent around Bradford here. I mean, I don't think the wide receiving core has been especially, excellent or dangerous. Haven't provided him a ton of support in that regard, but that is it. That's what he's going to have. He's not going to get Jeremy Maclin and Deshaun Jackson back here next week to be better deep threats or whatever. This is the team he's got to work with. This is the skill set that he's got to bring to the table. It is really fair to kind of reach that conclusion. I think if you're Kelly and you invested as much as Kelly in him to this point, and you have a major decision about how much to invest in him going forward, you would give yourself a little more time probably, and he can do that. Again, because they've won the last 2 games without Bradford playing, super great football, that affords Kelly, at least a little bit more time to say, all right, at least we're winning the games. If Bradford can just kind of take that step forward that they believe he can take, he could be it could still be a salvageable situation where he's the guy going forward. If it continues like this, not only does Kelly have to act to save this season and give his the other players every chance to win, but he's also got to say, I'm cutting bait with Bradford going forward, and I have to start figuring out what my future is going to be. And so it's a situation with a lot of ramifications for now and for down the line. And Kelly's got to kind of keep an eye on both. But ultimately, unless Bradford starts to play more like the guy we saw in the summer, I don't know how you could possibly think he's going to be the guy going forward. So at that point, you might as well, go with Mark Sanchez or whoever and bring Thad Lewis out of off-ball to see what's left there, because you're not going to invest $100 million in Sam Bradford, I wouldn't think, based on what we've seen.
Well, right. At what point do they make up their mind that Bradford isn't the guy moving forward, and is it at that point they contemplate playing a guy? Look, to me, it's not who's the more talented guy right now. It is who can run this offense better. And I'm not saying that Sanchez is a better player or even that he runs the offense better, but I thought Chip Kelly, Phil, gave a little bit of an open crack there when he said last week, when he was asked about Eli Manning's success, and he indicated, well, he's in the second year of this offense. He looks a lot more comfortable. Maybe Sanchez just is a lot more comfortable being in this offense in the second year than Bradford is.
Yeah, and I think when Chip said that, I think if he had a second meeting, it was that Bradford needs that too. So if you give up on Bradford now and go to Sanchez, it would be Sanchez's second year, but he would not have played the first half of it. So it may not have the same effect as Eli Manning's getting with the Giants sticking with him. You've got to, at some point at quarterback, you have got to identify your guy, and you've got to stick with him, and you've got to kind of ride it out for a while. And, I think Kelly's doing that right now with Sam Bradford. I don't know how long he does it. One thing he's kind of shown the last couple of years is that, especially with the Vic situation, he picked Vic, he went with him that first year, and when he felt like it wasn't going to get better, he pulled the plug, and he went decisively to Foles and stuck with him through some bumpy patches, and then it kind of worked out for him. Going into the second year, Foles had come off a really good, half year basically. He was dead set on Foles. There was no doubt Foles was the guy. Sanchez never really had a chance to win the job in training camp last year. But except for that brief period where Foles was the guy, Kelly really hasn't, sounded like one guy was automatically the guy. I mean, there has not been that guy in this offense because they haven't had that guy at quarterback. They haven't had a guy worthy of being the franchise, number one quarterback. Foles looked like it briefly, got that, benefit of the doubt. Then the wheels kind of came off there. So I don't know what, the clock in Kelly's head is on all this. I really don't. I mean, that's not something he's going to share with us. Like I said, his pattern has been that guy is the guy until he's not anymore. And when he's not, then it's over. And that's when we'll find out that Kelly's been down on Bradford if he gets to that point.
All right, let's
make a change. He'll make a change.
Yeah, and I know that's a hot topic, and a lot of people are weighing in on it. Let's take a look at this is a big game. This is a very good Carolina defense. DeMarco Murray, 109 yards, 22 carries. Do you get the sense, though, that he's starting to get into a rhythm, that the offensive line is getting better, or are those yards more based on the fact that this is just not a very good Giants defense and they were pretty worn out, or do you like what you're seeing from Murray all of a sudden?
Yeah, it's hard to, separate things out. I mean, you can only see the Eagles against who they play. And, the running game seemed a little better against New Orleans 2 weeks ago, and they're not a great run defense team. So you kind of took that with a grain of salt. But the Giants were pretty good against the run statistically before this game against the Eagles. They're number 8, I think, overall against the run, league-wide. So, I mean, that's even after the Eagles game. So that was real. I mean, that was an excellent effort on the offensive line's part. The offensive line was much better overall, as protection and run blocking. I mean, they just played a much better game, and it looked like Murray really got some level of comfort, which he had not shown before that. So I think that's a combination. The Panthers, it's a good defense. It's a solid front. It's not that far from what the Giants do in some ways. You have Steve Spagnuolo in New York. You have Ron Rivera and Sean McDermott in Carolina. They're all Jim Johnson coaching tree guys. They do different things. They pick different fruit off that tree, but they have some at least in philosophy. So, it's definitely getting better. It would have been hard to get worse than it looked early on. So you got to take that into account. But at least it's progress. And Bradford was making the same kind of progress. This offense would look pretty good.
We also have some injury stuff here from Phil. Michael Kendricks and Alonzo both at practice today, and I don't think Alonzo has any anticipation of playing, but will we see Michael Kendricks back on the field this Sunday night?
It sounds like it. Kendricks said if the game was today, he would probably play. He's in that spot that guys get into with injuries like this, the hamstring injury. When you start to feel better, and you try to push it, and when you try to push it, you end up hurting it again. So that's what happened to him. He went back, probably came back too soon, tried to play at the game in Washington, was gone after a couple of plays, tweaked the hamstring. So it looks like he'll probably go. Alonzo basically said, no, there's not really much chance this week. He didn't really do anything today. Bill Davis had said that he did, or that he would practice and see where he stood. But Alonzo said he didn't really do very much today and probably wouldn't do anything the rest of the week either. He's hoping that after the bye week, that game in Dallas, if things are continue on the track they're on, he may be able to be ready to play in that game. But with him, it's more of a, it's a knee injury. It's something he's got to, when it's ready, he'll be ready to go. With Kendrick, it's more just a feel thing. And again, as guys feel better with hamstrings, then they tend to push it and hurt themselves again. So if Kendrick doesn't have any setbacks in practice tomorrow, I would think he'll probably play Sunday night.
How does he fit in obviously Ryan's being out, they've kind of really lucked themselves into not having to make a major decision here with the way Hicks is playing, right?
Yeah, they've gotten very lucky with Hicks. And, they say, well, that's what we thought we were getting in the draft. And we all kind of scratched our heads when they took a linebacker in the third round after having added Alonzo. But it's really worked out, very fortunate for them because Hicks has been just unnaturally good for a rookie linebacker. And they've needed him to be. They needed him to play not only a fair amount of snaps, but they needed him to be on the field, basically, running the defense, from the kind of signal caller perspective with the various injuries and everything. So it sounds like he didn't practice today. He may not practice tomorrow, but he's a veteran. If he can get it going so he can play, they expect him to try if he can. If you have Ryans and Kendricks and Hicks, that gives you enough to work with probably, so that if one of those guys tweaks an injury and has to go out during the game, at least we'll have somebody out there playing inside linebacker.
Yeah, I know Hicks has really been a surprise here, but you're watching this guy play and you're hearing what Chip Kelly's saying about him and Billy Davis. Do you see that they take him off the field? Is he a guy that has to be out there?
Yeah, I think he's earned the right to play. I think that they can find ways to move people around. I mean, Kendricks was an outside linebacker in the 4-3, and injury. He's a guy that can run with tight ends and play some. He can cover people and he can rush the passer as well. I think he could considerably move either Alonzo or Kendricks outside for some snaps and get Hicks on the field on the inside. It was a big question mark how they were going to, use all these linebackers they had. It's turned out that the injuries, the problem kind of solved itself. So, if they all were suddenly healthy and going 100%, I don't know how you take Hicks out of the equation. But these things tend to work out so that there's always, and it could be Hicks next. It could be one of the other guys getting hurt again. So, one way or another, it seems like Hicks is going to get on the field.
Yeah, Phil Sheridan's with us, ESPN.com, NFL Nation. I agree. The way the kid's playing, it seems that any time something goes well, he's around the ball, whether it be a fumble, a forced fumble, a tackle. He seems like he's a guy that they got to figure out how to keep out there. Phil, right now we've seen this defense with Billy Davis the last couple of years. We've criticized them some, but what is this defense evolving into?
That's a great question. I was actually just writing something about this. It's going to post in a little while on the NFL Nation blog. It was about this time last year, if you recall, they shut out the Giants at home on a primetime game, 27-0. And then it was 2 weeks later that they played Carolina, and that game was 45-7 Eagles going into the fourth quarter. They gave up a couple of garbage time touchdowns in the fourth quarter. It ended up being 45-21. What they caused 5 turnovers in that game. They sacked Cam Newton 9 times in that game. At that point, coming off a shutout and that performance against Carolina, the Eagles were 7-2. It looked like the defense was, a major force, and it was just a question of where their playoff seeding would be. So, are they going to continue this year to be on a track where the defense is a dominant force and can keep it and let the offense kind of get its act together, or are the wheels going to come off the way they did last year? I mean, this time last year, we had no idea that the secondary was going to disintegrate the way it did. There was absolutely no sign of any of that. So, I don't know. I mean, last year at this time, I thought, boy, they're getting it together. Tier 2 under Davis. The players are really kind of finding themselves. It kind of looks like that right now. Last year, we were all kind of surprised when everything fell apart. I don't expect that. There are a lot of different players in the mix. They seem to be playing more, soundly every week. But until we see it, through a full season, I'm still going to have my fingers crossed watching the Eagles defense.
Well, they got to Eli the other night, something a lot of teams couldn't do, and they continue in all of their wins. The underlining factor, Phil, is they're getting turnovers. The Jets game, obviously the Saints game, and the Giant game. They are forcing turnovers with that defense. Seems to be when they do that, this team wins. When they struggle at rushing the passer and forcing turnovers, well, the way their offense is playing, they're struggling there too. We'll see if they come alive against a undefeated, very good Carolina team. And, of course, you can hear that game here on 97.3. He's Phil Sheridan at Sheridan Scribe on Twitter. Check out ESPN.com's NFL Nation and click on the Eagles for more. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Mike.